Have any redditors here witnessed a murder? If so, what happened? Was visiting a cousin unannounced. I said hey after walking through the back door in the kitchen and went to raid their fridge. Heard a gunshot go off and dropped to the floor. I didn't know where the shot came from, so I assumed someone outside was popping off. I crawled to the living room and realized he had shot himself through the mouth. I look back now and I wish I would have shouted louder or made a better effort to greet him. He wasn't the kind of person to do something like that if others were around. A guy fresh from prison carjacked an SUV with a young boy in the back seat. Mom tried to get him out, but the shoulder strap of his seatbelt was behind him. He got caught and twisted in the belt, outside the car. The guy took off dragging the kid down the highway, hopefully killing him instantly. He passed us after several miles and we chased him down, blocked him in at an intersection, and dragged him out, holding him for police. 20 years ago next week on my 34th wedding anniversary. I can see it like it was yesterday. I've witnessed a murder when I was 19, 5 years ago. It was just a regular man with his wife or girlfriend, I don't know exactly. I was hanging out with my friends in bar. They were there too. They have left the bar for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes passed we have left it too, to smoke a cig and head home. We saw how they're arguing with 2 dudes. As I could figure, they have insulted his wife. They were about 14 meters from us. I've literally dropped my cigarette from mouth, when one dude have hit that poor guy in his jaw, and another one stabbed him about 7 times. His wife was screaming in horror. One of our friends, he is a police officer nowadays, rushed to them. We followed. Those punks ran away. We didn't even try to get them. We had no weapons. Dude was bleeding and moaned in pain, and we could not do anything. One of us called ambulance while me and my cop friend tried to stop pouring blood. Dude didn't make it. I don't know if those degenerates are behind the bars or free. I'm not surprised, though, but it was a little unexpected. Poor dude. First post here on my brother's account. He just showed me Reddit. Love my bro. It was midwinter and I was 21 at the time. I was renting out an apartment where there were stairs leading up to the 2nd floor to the left of my room. There were only 2 floors in the whole building. One night, I was on my computer, listening to music, watching, etc. when I heard what seemed to be a giant commotion coming from above me. I couldn't quite make out the words though, due to the walls. After the yelling came sounds of smashing, then almost what seemed to be bumping and bags being tossed around. About 30 minutes after the initial yelling I decided to take a look upstairs. I made my way upstairs and the door was wide open. I forgot to mention that it was a very tiny apartment complex with only like 4 apartments on each floor. I remember that there was a putrid smell, rotting meat or an old fridge with mold in it. I honestly should have turned back then, but no, for some reason I had to investigate. What I was about 5 feet away from the door, the sounds stop. I turned the corner. What I saw will never leave my mind. There was blood everywhere. A dismembered body being put into garbage bags by a woman that was about twice my age. There was blood everywhere. But the weirdest and more disturbing part about it all was that the woman was smiling at me. Directly into my eyes. That's when I just got the fuck out of there. I booked it, out of the apartment. I probably didn't stop running for like 5 blocks. I ran straight into a local bar that I go to occasionally and told them what happened. They called the police, and they let me call my dad to come pick me up since I didn't have my phone. Apparently the woman was rooming with her friend. They were drinking and then they got into an intense argument. One thing led to another and the woman strangled the other woman to death. The things I saw that night haunt me to this day and I still get nightmares and flashbacks. Edit 1, I don't know what happened to her, but I really hope the alcohol was what made her smile. I could have been living below a freak for months. My BFF's husband's best friend. Let's call him Tony. We were all at a barbecue in the back of their building celebrating my godson's first communion. Another man, who had done work for Tony's parents, also lived in the building. He felt he had been unfairly paid for that work and took Tony's parents to court. He won $3,000 of the $8,000 he was asking for, losing, in his mind, $5,000. He came out in the middle of the barbecue and shot Tony with an old rifle he owned. Tony died instantly. It was a lucky shot to the heart. For $5,000. Tony was only 34 and completely uninvolved. Lived in a bad area of South London as a teenager. Saw dead bodies from various things such as guy ran over by bus, stabbing victim etc. But one time I was in my local co-op supermarket, and walked out to see two big lads beefing and one pulling out a knife and stabbing the other 3 times. I remember the guy who got stabbed made a noise similar to the OF sound effect and just crumpled to the ground. The stabber kind of just ran off with dozens of people looking at him screaming, then ambulances and police sirens pulling up in about 2 minutes. My Catholic mother thought I was buying drugs with her milk money because I was late home. I was about 7 years old. Me and my brother were playing video games. The TV is close to the gate so we could see everything that was happening out there. A guy was riding a bike and a man with a motorcycle helmet came and shoots the guy in the back. He fell on the ground and tried to run, but the guy shot him 2 more times and he was dead. It was so surreal I didn't even heard anything, I just froze in place and couldn't take my eyes away. My brother had to pull me by the arm to the back of the house because I couldn't even move. I didn't even believe it was real until I saw the police there removing the body. My grandpa. He lives in what's considered to be a pretty bad part of Puerto Rico called Bayamon, about 10-20 minutes from San Juan. One night at a stoplight, he sees a commotion between 2 people out of the corner of his eye, and when he looks over, he sees a man standing over another pointing a .45 at him and shoots him 4 times. My grandpa knew it was a .45 since he had been drafted when he was younger, so by the sound he knew what it was. Immediately, the dude who shot the guy ran over to my grandpa and according to him, he had a freaky looking plastic rabbit mask on. My grandpa fucking floored it, running about 2 red lights. It was really late at night so there were no cars around. What he noticed then was that the guy actually carjacked an old woman's SUV behind him and gave chase for a little while until he broke off. I believe that case is still unsolved, but we assumed it to be gang related, as most of Puerto Rico's murders are sadly. I was staying in a hostel in Paris. I woke in the middle of the night to 2 men drunk across the courtyard. I could only make out bits and pieces of what they were saying. However, I could tell as the tone shifted from typical drunken conversation to upset arguing. I think I heard a thump that I thought was the noisy elevator. Then a rhythmic sound like sex. But then I started to hear painful moaning, heavy breathing and someone saying no repeatedly. My jet-lagged brain filled these sounds as one of the men raping the other. It was pretty horrific and I had nightmares about it for days after. I laid in bed trying to figure out what to do. I had arrived earlier that day and didn't have a SIM card yet, so I couldn't call the police. I debated on my head if I should try to stop it or if I would be putting myself in danger. As the sounds became less loud, I heard the sounds of sirens. There was a sense of relief that someone had called for help. Shortly thereafter, one of the women I was sharing the room with got up and looked out the window. She said not to look because there was a body. I realized that the thump I heard was not the elevator but his body hitting the ground. That the thumping and painful moaning was not rape but CPR on a badly injured man. When I went down to breakfast in the morning, the police were investing and I heard people saying that it was over €7. I honestly don't know if it was suicide or murder, but I do know that I heard arguing just before. I have often wondered if it was someone trying to stop a suicide or committing murder. I was a very naive and inexperienced 22-year-old white middle-class girl from small-town Mississippi. I had taken a job after grad school at Wheelock College, now BU, in Dorchester, South Boston as an early intervention specialist. Basically, I worked with at-risk and or developmentally delayed infants and toddlers. In a very superficial nutshell, I helped their parents create educational plans for them to use in the home and helped them get into appropriate Head Start or pre-K programs. Basically, I played with babies all day and did a lot of paperwork. One Friday afternoon in July, I was scheduled to see a 33-month-old whose family I had been having trouble connecting with. This matters because he was due to age out of the program at 36 months and then I couldn't help them get placements anywhere. In turn, this meant that the child who needed educational assistance wouldn't be able to get government-funded placement in a classroom somewhere in the city until first grade. That's a big gap when you already have a developmental delay. So, anyway, it's Friday. It's July something 1997. It's nearly 5 p.m. I'm a dumbass white girl completely out of my element in a pretty crime-ridden neighborhood in Dorchester. It's fucking hot and tempers are high. Just as I'm tuning into the street, I see a white sedan fly off from the curb in front of the house I'm supposed to be at while someone is pulling a gun back inside the car. Stupid, dumbass me pulls up in front of the house and gets out to grab my bag of toys and my files. Just as I'm pulling my bags out, it hits me that there are about 20 people surrounding this man in a semicircle screaming and holding him up. And he's bleeding and gasping for air. So, me, remember middle-class naive white girl from small-town MS who had never even met a Jewish person until moving to Boston, I get back in my car as quietly as possible and just sort of drive away. Honestly, I was in shock and had no clue what to do. In the next block over there happened to be some cops sitting in front of a business. So I park beside them and walk over and say in my ridiculously thick accent, hey you all. Well, I was just at blah blah address and I think I saw somebody get shot and then this white car sped away. And I was supposed to go see this baby living there, but I kinda think maybe I shouldn't. What do you all think? They look at each other and then look at me like I'm the dumbest rock this side of the moon and then they say, you need to go home right this minute and do not come back to this area this late in the day in the summer again. This was right before cell phones were becoming ubiquitous and was actually what prompted me to get my first cell phone.